Hello, everybody. It's going to be May in about 3 hours or so. It is April 30th, 2020. We're about 50 days or so into the quarantine, stay-at-home, shelter-in-place, balcony brew review era. This is number 4. I am Larry Hawley. With me, as always, is Paul Banks. Paul, say hello.
Hello.
Doing well, I hope?
Yeah, doing great, man. All things considered, making the best of what's available, I guess.
And I guess that's all we really can do. So, Paul, what are you raising your glass to tonight? What do you got with you?
I'm starting out with a St. Archer Gold, which bills itself as the ultimate light beer, and it's basically what you would get if you wanted to have beer that came in a package of a hard seltzer, because it has those like kind of Red Bull sized cans, and it bills itself with this almost, just under 100 calories, 4.2% ABV. Discovered it a few months ago when they were having samplings of it at Jewel, and it's a very easy drinking summer kind of beer. And like I said, it's I guess you would say it's a beer for hard seltzer drinkers is how I would label it.
It's not bad. It's a good marketing tool.
Yeah, I mean, it goes down pretty smooth. And then the second thing I'm having when I'm done with it, because again, it's very light and doesn't really hit you too much, is and this is one of my favorite breweries. Had the chance to visit in January in Lexington when I was in Kentucky. It's the Kentucky Ale. This is their Vanilla Barrel Cream Ale. This one is the lightest of their variety in terms of ABV. It's only 5.5%. The coffee brew, I believe, is 8.4, and then the kind of standard, their flagship, the Kentucky Bourbon Barrel Ale, is about 8.8. And as we continue to go on in this show, I'll be sampling those from time to time because they've got a good portfolio, and it's really interesting. Yeah, the Vanilla Barrel is like, I guess, a dessert beer, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I haven't had that one. I like their offerings. Their offerings are good for someone who likes the taste of a barrel-aged beer but doesn't want to get knocked on the floor by having a barrel-aged beer. I believe all of them are under 10. And that's a pretty good amount. And they have a pretty good flavor even when they're going down, and even if it's just a little bit, if the APV is not as high. So the Kentucky, the barrel age that they have for their company is really good for that. I actually really, really enjoy their stuff.
And it's really interesting. The coffee barrel is it's pretty strong, and there's actually another one. I forgot what it's called, but it mixes this one, the Vanilla Barrel, and the coffee. So it's like a coffee with cream kind of beer, and it's, to me, it's really cool that you have all these different notes and different blends and different flavors kind of coming together. And like you said, it's you can have a couple of these and kind of pace yourself with it versus like a Bourbon County. You have one, maybe two in a night at most, and
And you might still be on the floor after you have that.
Yeah, depending on what you had to eat or how much sleep you had, sure.
Yeah, and that certainly is the case. But good choices, Paul, there. So there's a liquor store near me that has a lot of decent beers. They have some back beers. So they have some Christmas beers, and they have some October beers. So last week with the Belgium October, no, excuse me, not the Belgium, God, it's crazy, but the Berlin Oktoberfest completely canceled. Oh, I mean, you must think I'm having like 5 of these beers if you think that I just said Belgium for Oktoberfest. But the two brothers, Adam
Berlin,
Smashers.
you mean Munich, right?
Munich, is it Munich or Berlin? So I'm all over the place. I've already started off.
No, twice, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm missing this completely. You'd think I'd had a bunch of these. So in honor of Oktoberfest being canceled, I did a kind of a halfway to Oktoberfest. Picked up about 3 beers over there. Did one for the Balcony Brew Review from 1090. That's a brewery out in the suburbs. And then today I have Two Brothers Adam Smashers. So this is a barrel-aged Marzen. It's 7% alcohol by volume. And I had this back in the fall, and I noticed it's a pretty strong tasting beer. You get a lot of the barrel in it, a lot more than I was used to. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it gives you a much stronger oomph than you would get usually from an Oktoberfest. Oktoberfest, typically the Marzens are pretty light. which is great because you can have a couple of them during October, during the fall, and you're not going to feel like crap. You can get a chance to try out a couple of beers and not be completely knocked to the floor. This is a little bit different. This is a little bit stronger. It has a very pronounced flavor. Really enjoy it a lot. I usually get at least 1 6-pack per fall. Decided to go for this spring with the canceling of the Munich Oktoberfest. Third time's a charm. So I did that for my halfway to Oktoberfest, as we usually would do halfway to St. Patrick's Day, and that is the beer I have today. Paul, I believe, Paul, you know what? I think we tried this. I don't know if you did. I thought we tried this at Murphy's Bleachers outside of Wrigley Field last year. It would have been the second to last weekend of September, the last Cub weekend at home. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes, that was like the final throes of the Cubs season.
That was. We were sitting outside as Craig Kimbrell gave up the 2 homers, and we saw the Cardinal fans cheering. We knew that wasn't good. And that is our Atom Smasher experience, which ended up a very interesting experience considering I botched the place of Oktoberfest twice. But
well, one place we got to go back to is we went somewhere in October. It was unseasonably cold. I believe it was a Friday night. It was a German place. Like, they had a lot of Oktoberfest.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. There was it's in Logan Square, the Radler.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, the Radler was really good. They had good beer there. They're pretty solid. It's interesting. Good, solid German offerings, and about 10 o'clock they become like this big dance place. Very interesting combination, but I enjoyed it. I thought the beer was fantastic. Thought their food was fantastic. I'm a fan of the Radler. I've actually been there one time the first year I was back here. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, the Radler, actually, that's like Berlin's main drink is a Radler. It's like a local delicacy. It's a mixture of beer and I think 7-Up or something.
I've heard of them before. I haven't had a lot of Radlers. If I've had a Radler, I want to say maybe 2 or 3 times. It's been quite a while since I've had one. It's mainly a summer one, but I don't even remember even last year having a Radler. I'll have to check my Untappd. I know I've had them in the past, but I'm not 100% sure that I've had it.
Well, hopefully by fall, something like that'll be open.
Hopefully. I'm thinking it will be open. We're going to keep the confidence that it will be open. I'm keeping the confidence that June 1st things will get pulled and we'll be able to emerge. But another 30 days, you might have heard J.B. Pritzker extending the stay-at-home through May 30th. I don't know if it's the 31st. I don't know if he just crossed it in there. But either way, until the end of May, you're staying in. Let's get to that thing you brew. Paul, what do you got for us?
2 World War movies that I screened. One very, very recent. The other from a different era, but both excellent. I would say... Well, the World War II movie, I'll start with that, A Bridge Too Far. You could call that an epic because it's 3 hours long, but I mean, that is the very definition of an ensemble cast, an all-star cast. You've got Michael Caine, Anthony Hopkins, Robert Redford, Sean Connery, Laurence Olivier, Maximilian Schell. There's so many. I can't even. It's hard. I'm leaving out at least half the A-listers there on that one.
Good.
But it's really interesting. It's about Operation Market Garden, which was the largest airdrop in the history of warfare up until that time, which ultimately failed, and you see how it came up just short. But it's I would say it's a great. I mean, there's so many movies made about World War II, but I would say if you had a kind of a good starting point, that's a great one because you've got a phenomenal score. You have this wonderful theme song, this great orchestra behind it, and it's based off a book, of course. The author had two books that were made into movies about World War II, and it's always interesting. There's a reason we've made more movies about that war than any other because it's probably the closest where you could say like we were the good guys and they were the bad guys, and it's kind of clear cut versus when they make Vietnam movies, those are kind of more about the weird ambiguity and people kind of going nuts because that was this war that went on forever that really made no sense for why we were there, what it was about. And then that kind of transitions into the other World War movie I want to talk about, World War One. And it made me realize, why aren't there World War One movies? Why don't people ever? Why isn't there a lot of that in pop culture? And that's because that was a war that was ambiguous and didn't have a clear cut. It was just a bunch of arms race and militarism and just competition, and you just had all these alliances, and then it just blew up with one monarch being assassinated. And then what's fascinating about 1917, this is basically a movie that you really watch for the all-encompassing aspect. Like, I've never seen such great cinematography. The way they showcase the angles of what you're seeing and the sights and sounds, and it's not as much about story as it is about the effects. But what's really interesting about it is that was a war where it seemed you had all these elaborate trenches that they dug in, and then you moved a few, and then you just moved a little bit, and then it seemed really strange to me and kind of counterproductive that it's like you would lose all these men and it would take this long to advance very, very short in terms of territory. So I know I probably bit off too much there and said a lot, but I'm sorry.
No, it's great, man. One other reason, and I don't know if this sounds silly, World War II, Paul, now is 100 years old, and I don't know, and I think for what you talked about, maybe it's the distance time that we don't hear more about World War One movies, although we hear about other conflicts through history. World War II, obviously now you're getting pretty far away. You're talking now a hefty amount of years. But it is interesting you bring that up, that you don't get a lot of World War One movies, and I'm really excited to see 19. The cinematography that I've heard about for 1917 is pretty incredible. I kind of can't wait to see it. I've only heard people rave about it. It looks pretty incredible from what I've seen, just even in the previews. It's some guy, it looks like running through a field. I don't know. Did you see that preview?
Oh yeah, I've seen
and
that.
I think
That's yeah.
and they drag the numbers across, I think, as 1917. I want to think that that's the tease that I've seen. But I can't wait to see that movie because, it looks just like a powerhouse from the fundamental shooting of it. So that's pretty cool for me.
It's a very accurate trailer because the movie is about this guy on his progress, on his journey, and again, about territory to this territory.
So for mine, Paul, I think I'd be remiss not to mention the Last Dance. And I don't know
Yes.
if you've seen it a lot or have you been watching it?
I have been watching it. I enjoy it. I do think it's good, but I just can't take it with social media. Like I'm sorry that we have no sports, and I know people are so starved for it, but it's just like you'd think it was the end all be all. Like, was the only thing that exists.
It's good. I really enjoy it. It has gotten a lot more hype than I even thought. I think obviously with having no sports on, that's been the case. But the hype has been as incredible. I think it's the most hyped documentary in Chicago sports history. There was a lot of hype around Catching Hell, which was the Steve Bartman one back in 2011. It was actually supposed to be in 2010 and then got delayed an entire year as Alex Gibney either was looking to try to get Bartman or they were looking to try to get more stuff. Either way, it was a fantastic film. I can't remember one being more anticipated than this. I don't know if there was a lot of anticipation for Brian's song when it came out on ABC now almost 50 years ago. I don't ever remember a documentary having it. What's interesting, Paul, is for me watching it, it's incredible how much you recall. Like, it's the part of your life where I think when you're a developing sports fan, when you're developing your thought process what do I like, what kind of players am I a fan of, what kind of team am I a fan of, you remember everything. So going through those first 4 episodes, I have a pretty good memory of just about where I was for just about every major event that happened. And it's kind of incredible. Like, I remember when the Bulls won the first title, I remember waking my whole family up. I remember watching the original shot in 1989 and running in my hallway when they won that game. I remember when Scottie Pippen came back to the lineup because they didn't think Scottie Pippen was going to come back because he was demanding a trade. All of these things are there. It's so vivid how you remember things like that in your life and how you remember happy things in your life. Because that brings me up to the second point, is that everybody seems to be talking negatively about the Bulls. It was Camelot. Yes, it ended crappy. And yes, Jerry Krause should have done more to at least get them 1 to 2 more years. I don't think that group wins 4 or 5 more titles after that, but I think they could have gotten 1 or 2. The Pacers were coming. The Lakers obviously were coming. Of course, they ended up getting Phil, and that helped to re-energize them. But Kobe and Shaq were a team, and they were going to be a problem. The Pacers were very, very good. I think the Bulls would have won in 99, but after that, it would have been interesting. But there's so much seems negativity that comes on Krause. And it's deserved and it's not deserved because Krause did a lot of good. But you again, fostering relationships, fostering those through the years. This will be a topic one day on a Brew Review. Krause did it, and yet he didn't do it. And yet in the end, he alienated people, and it just became a problem. But the one thing I want people to focus on for that documentary is that time was awesome. And that all the negativity is just a little crazy to me. I don't know if you've seen it. Maybe this is just the observation that I've had. But it just seems like there's all this negativity about how it ended and not how it kind of went on. And that was all happy.
Right. I mean, to me, that's the most interesting thing is about Krause and the relationship, because you would never in a million years have a GM say, this will be this coach's final year at the start of the season, and then have in the middle of the year, right before the All-Star break, say the star player who transcends the game and transcends the team saying, well, I'm only going to play for this coach. And the GM's kind of like, well, we don't want him to leave, but if he's going to leave because he only wants to play for this coach, well, then so be it. Like, you would never have that. And if you did, that team would self-destruct and fall apart. So it's amazing that they were so dominant in spite of all this. And yeah, there is that negative angle. I guess, I would probably appreciate the series more if I wasn't aware of it or hadn't lived through it. And I think I completely agree with you that it is the most hyped up documentary of all time because it really seems to be national and global. I mean, we're right here in the thick of it. We're in the midst of it. So, I mean, we really lived it. We all know it. And the hype here is going to be even more. But I don't know. I don't know if it's that negative.
Just some of the reaction to it. It's nothing absolutely out of the ordinary or nothing crazy. Just seemed like that first couple episodes, people are like, man, this is really sad. I'm like, well, no, it really wasn't sad. The Krause thing, I'll never understand why he didn't say it was Jerry's last year. I'll never understand till the day I die. I'll never understand what he had against Phil. I'll never, and that's lost to the histories because obviously Krause has passed away. You just will never know. We'll never know.
Well, why did Reinsdorf not? It's on him. The buck stops with him. Why didn't he step in and say something?
I don't know. And that's a great point that was brought up by Jack Silverstein. He's a historian here on Twitter here in Chicago. He has a very prominent Twitter page where he does a lot of historical. And he said that's his greatest question of it. Why did Jerry Reinsdorf choose Jerry Krause and not Phil Jackson and Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen? That's a question that, has not been answered yet. And I think through time may be answered. But again, just a lot of buzz with that Bulls stuff. And it's a lot. Paul, let's get random here. Island of Misfit Toys, what do you got for us?
Oh, I was going to talk about something that kind of relates to this. And I was going to talk about this book I'm reading, Zucked, Waking Up to the Facebook Catastrophe by Roger McNamee, who's a former Silicon Valley, well, I'm sure he's still prominent in the Valley, but he was an early investor in Google and Facebook. And he's kind of made the rounds in the last year or two plugging this book. He was the guy who really started to bring social media to, to really show us the adverse effects that it has. And, there's a lot to get in there. That's a whole nother podcast. And it's a great book, and I highly recommend it. And I can say that I really see a lot in this book that applies to me, and I can see myself already learning from this book and changing my habits for the better and being healthier with it. But like I said, there's so much here to touch upon. We'll not get into that. The one thing I wanted to get on is, and it relates to what we were just talking about in terms of negativity and in social media, where the most outrageous voice, the loudest voice, is the one that gets heard, and it's not a meritocracy, and it's not about credentials or expertise as it is outrageousness, and that is how they really hook you with the most. I mean, you could just call it trolling to some extent. And as I'm reading this book and I'm seeing everybody, they're tweeting about the Last Dance, like, oh man, this is more exciting than an NBA Finals Game 7. And it's like, okay, you're just saying something extreme to get retweets and likes. And then I see Bill Simmons, who, in my opinion, he's lost a lot off his fastball. He's not, I mean, I think Bill Simmons in some ways is like the Elvis Presley of sports journalists, because he was in the right place at the right time. He had the right medium there to kind of push him along. Like Elvis, there's all these impersonators that he spawned, but I could tell like Bill Simmons was really, he knows he's not as relevant as he used to be, and he kind of lost it because after The Last Dance this last week with episodes 3 and 4, he tweets, why do people find Dennis Rodman interesting? He was never interesting. He wasn't interesting then. Why is he interesting now? And I'm like, come on, man. You don't believe that. Why are you tweeting that just to get attention? Come on, dude.
Dennis was one of the most transformative athletes I had, in my opinion, of the athlete that I even mentioned during one of my Chicago Encore videos, because he was just somebody that was completely out of the realm of what I might root for, and I meant that. I appreciate athletes for being different, but after Dennis, I really appreciated what different athletes brought to the table. That's why I was a big fan of Terrell Owens and still am. I was a huge fan of Terrell. I realized that just going by the norm wasn't necessarily a sign, by going against the norm, it wasn't a sign of, you're being a bad teammate or a bad player. A maverick, which is what Phil Jackson described him as, was great. It was perfect. He was a maverick. He was his own dude. It was absolutely perfect. And I think that that's what's interesting when it comes to Dennis, is that he was somebody who changed my opinion of what I looked for in an athlete. I appreciate athletes who are creative. I appreciate athletes who are different. I appreciate an athlete who's willing to wear different hair, or is willing to do things a little bit oddball. But if it works for him and he's not harming anybody, it's great. I think that it really opened my eyes. So I'm most surprised to see Simmons tweet that.
Right, and that's really sad that that's what social media does. And you've got, I mean, I'm not going to get into politics or anything, but there's a lot of political figures that are just like not, I don't even call them like, you wouldn't, like they would say like, oh, this person's like conservative or liberal. I'm like, nah, they're just attention seeking. They're just people that have no credentials. And if I see like their people on this like certain list and I see their name trending, I'm like, I'm not on Twitter. I'm out of here. And because they just say crazy things like that. And for Simmons, for all that he's accomplished and all that he's done, Clay Travis is another sports writer I really used to look up to like 10 or 15 years ago, who's gone off the deep end and kind of does that. And people might think it's entertaining, but I don't find it entertaining. And Rodman, I mean, pick your angle about what makes him interesting. That he was homeless and a janitor at an airport, and then he gets into this small school and then taken in by this family in the middle of rural Oklahoma, and he becomes one of the greatest rebounders of all time, one of the best defensive players of all time, or, Carmen Electra and Madonna in their prime. He had both of them. And then, like you said, the hair, the outfits. I read his book called Bad as I Want to Be in high school.
Oh, yeah.
And I love the part where he says the Spurs were so sick of him, they would have traded me for Babe the Pig. And he goes, they traded me for Will Perdue, a guy with no game at all. And
That'll do.
That'll do, pig. That'll
That'll
do.
do. Paul, for mine, I want to get to something interesting, maybe into trolling. And there's been this movement online, and I am one of those people who, like, seriously, like, I'm about motivating and being better and trying to do everything I can do be for myself. But there's been this trend on, and it's actually a tweet that people have been kind of stealing and pasting, is like, if you don't get a new side hustle, if you don't learn something else when you're inside in this quarantine, if you don't do all this stuff, you're a failure. You failed quarantine. And I think that I think it's absolutely insane. I mean, what kind of asshole does that? The whole point of this is just to stay sane. Stay sane.
Right.
Stay sane, stay safe, stay mentally engaged. You can worry about that stuff. It's great if you want to do that. Some people, my workouts have been slow, but I'm staying sane. That's what you can't have these. This is what I get afraid of is like jobs. Well, we're not going to do it if you didn't do something in quarantine. You were meant to survive quarantine. This is not about coming out here and trying to continue this hustle that as I said, and I'll get into another thing that I believe everybody who says you've got to grind and work all the time, I think that it can be misstrewn and can be really damaging if it's done wrong. You shouldn't be hustling right now. You should be in somewhat relaxing. You should be getting your mind right. Who cares if you don't pick up a skill or you don't pick up a side hustle? Say you gain a couple pounds. Trust me, I'm the most self-conscious of weight in history. I've pretty much resorted myself, I'm going to gain a few pounds. But I'm going to stay sane in my mind. I can't believe people are pushing that. If you can keep your mind straight, and not infect others with this virus, you've won. I'm just shocked. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. It really kind of it perturbed me. I was pretty upset. I was pissed. Like, you can't think that. Stay sane. That's all you got to do.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'd say obviously the number one goal is to stay healthy and to flatten the curve. And if we all do that, we win. Number two, and I guess you could say it's 1A and 1B, they're kind of the same, is like you said, to not lose your mind and keep it occupied. And I would say the best way to do that is to have little to-do lists, little checklists, little goals, and little objectives, and do what you can to meet them, and go on that. And Jesus, I mean, there's 30 million people unemployed. We're easily going to hit Great Depression era unemployment, if not worse, if we're not there already, and the stats just don't show it yet. And these idiots are talking about side hustles and self-improvement and moving up in the world. I mean, good God. Think about all the people that are in industries that aren't going to come back. People that have businesses that can't reopen even with social distancing and everything else. And think about all the supply chains of those businesses and all the ancillary businesses that accompany that, and all these people that are completely ruined by something way out of their hands. And yeah, I always like when I see someone tweeting that or whatever, and someone will always say like, "Oh, is your side hustle stealing tweets?"
Yep, I saw that exact one actually. It was pretty good. I forget who tweeted it out, but and then 3 other people followed with that. So that was really interesting. Again, I don't understand why people are pushing this. I don't get it. I don't like it at all. And stay sane and stay healthy. And you've done that. You've won. You can worry about going back when things open up a little bit and trying to achieve again. You'll have that day. If you want to go ahead and go all out and get a side hustle, perfect. Just don't expect others to do it, nor put the expectation that failure is going to mean that you're going to be looked down upon or you're going to be disregarded for jobs. That's just absolute crap. Paul, one more sip. What do you got for us? One final thought before we wrap this up.
Well, I'd like to talk about the good side of social media, and that's pet Instagram. And I've been saying this for at least 2 or 3 years, that there is no better place to see humans online. Humans are at their best online when they're pretending to be animals. And I've been fortunate enough to have a couple different groups for Otis, and one of them, the Mafia Kitty Club, I always run through health issues and advice and maintenance, and I get everybody's opinion and everything. And then, we talk about everything, and this is a worldwide kitty club. And as everything has transpired, it's been kind of interesting to get the view from Germany, from Italy, from Greece. Um, and then we go on the Zoom calls. We've had a couple Zoom calls with the humans behind the cat accounts, and um, yeah, there's this Asian woman who lives in London. She's got a British accent, and then the Scottish guy, and then he's got his accent, and just really fun. There's a woman in California, and her husband have 6 cats, and they've got like a room with all these pictures of cats and of their own cats, and then other cats, and they actually had a photo they printed out of Otis. I couldn't believe it.
Nice.
And I just was like, and we all said the same thing, that our human accounts get a very small fraction of the level of interaction and interactivity and response that our cat accounts do. And yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you want to talk about positivity? Horst the hero, he's this big fat black Halloween cat who lives in Zwickau, Germany. He has in his bio the ambassador to the good mood, and that's
Ah,
true. When I look at his account, it puts me in a good mood, and I was really happy that his humans sent me postcards and Christmas cards.
that's wonderful. Build that relationship and build that up through online, and you get real stuff from people that are real and not just on a screen or on a tweet or on Facebook. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. No, I love it. It kind of goes into mine, which is that some people have questioned where social interaction will go from here and how we could enter this like virtual world of meeting, which you might have seen in some sci-fi things where we exist almost in virtually. And I think that that's not going to be the case. I have 100% confidence that we will see social interaction again like we did before. It might take a while, and we might be washing our hands more, and we might be more conscious, maybe how we shake hands. But there's no way in the world that you're going to have people who are not going to meet other people anymore. I think that the one thing that gives me comfort in the future is the fact that we're going to see people that we care about again, and we're going to see them in person, and we're going to see them at restaurants. We'll see them at games, but probably not for a little while. We'll see them at concerts, but again, probably not for a while. There will be a new normal. There will be things that will change, and that's how it goes about it. That's happened in any major event that we've ever had in the history of our country, the history of mankind. But I think human connection will be there forever. This is not going to become a virtual world where we're just going to be talking to people on Zooms anymore. Humans want interaction. Humans want to talk with other people. And that's the one thing that gives me comfort, is that someday soon we will see other people. We'll talk again. It may not be like we had before till the vaccine, and that could be a little while away. But I think, man, there's going to be human interaction, and there's going to be people who will want to gather. This is not going to be a world where people just meet on Zooms. This will be a world where we will meet face to face, and people will have a chance to gather again. That's not going to change. Just some of the logistics will. But that's a thought I've had, because people have said that before. I don't know if you've had that thought as well, Paul, but I don't see the idea of hanging out changing because of this. It's just going to be altered a bit.
Yeah, like I actually had been kind of railing against this for a lot of years. Kind of starting in the early 2010s, there started to be a trend, and we all have it. We all know it. We all have people in our lives that just text you for the sake of texting you, or they DM you for the sake of DMing you. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes they're people you do know in real life, but they live in another state, or you don't see them as much. Sometimes it's people that you've just met online or just met in social media. And I've been railing against that for a while because I'm from the old school where I remember you would use the phone to make plans to see people.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously that is a paradigm that's completely shifted to the opposite extreme right now, and it's just crazy that these Gen Zs or these millennials that really get into that, and now I think we might have a backlash. I mean, that's kind of how society progresses is things go too far and then there's a backlash against it and then there's a reaction to a reaction.
Mm-hmm.
I do think we're going to hopefully get to a point where there's more in real life interaction, and I do agree with you that it's going to take time. It's going to be gradual. Just as we eased into this, just as we transitioned into this, we'll have to transition back gradually.
Mm-hmm. Might be time, but the human interaction will continue. And maybe Paul will do this podcast face to face one of these months.
Yeah, that is really the biggest shame is that this was totally meant to be like that was our original goal. We do our little promo videos on your balcony together, and we would clink our glasses. We would toast one another.
Well, we're in a bit of a rain delay, so
yes, the world is on pause.
Light. Awesome, Paul. As always, a pleasure. I appreciate it.
Cheers.
Good to talk to you. Awesome, man. Cheers to you, and cheers to everybody out there who is listening. Right now, it's on YouTube. You can find us at youtube.com/Balcony Brew Review. And this is our 4th episode, taped here on April 30th, 2020. We're about 50 days into shelter in place here in Illinois. So hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you for taking time to listen. And remember, stay positive, stay sane, stay at home, and cheers. Take care.